Hi there, welcome to this week's astrology forecast for the week of February 9th to the 15th. Happy Valentine's Day, and also this week we are headed into an eclipse, which will be on the 17th next week, and by the time we get to this weekend, we're in the critical zone of the eclipse. Actually, this week we're already in the semi-critical zone of the eclipse. That started about a week ago. And we are headed towards a Mercury retrograde. We enter the shadow of Mercury retrograde on the 12th. This is an action-packed kind of a week, and there's a lot going on here that is actually related to precious metals, to silver, right? Everything is kind of up a little bit after having been slammed down pretty hard last week, after having like a devastating crash. You know, people calling it the worst, most lost money since 2008, like this. It was pretty dramatic, but we're not done yet. I'm here to tell you we're in crazier astrology, so it's not over. So just be, hopefully you've been watching me and you've been prepared for everything to fall apart because we're headed towards that time. Now, it's not going to happen over this eclipse, okay? We're not going to have like a complete dollar crash or any of that over the eclipse. We could have some crazy value shifts happening over these next couple of weeks. We have another eclipse next month in March, so we're in the first eclipse season of the year, and then the second eclipse season happens in the summer. So there's a lot happening. There's a lot going on this year. Of course, there's always two sets of eclipses every year. But let me get into some of the details of what all this means, right? So first off, we are headed into the shadow of Mercury retrograde. So we go into the shadow on the 12th. This is at 8 degrees Pisces. Mercury doesn't actually retrograde until the 26th at 22 degrees Pisces. Now, it depends on where you are in the world. This could vary by a day or some hours or whatever. But point is, we're entering the shadow, which gives us a preview of coming attractions for the actual retrograde that happens starting on the 26th of this month. And this is going to have a lot. It's going to impact precious metals. We have the Mercury entering the shadow and then going retrograde. The pre-shadow starting on the 12th, and then the actual retrograde starts on the 26th, right? The pre-shadow starts at 8 degrees Pisces, and then the retrograde is at 22 degrees Pisces. And so we're going to retrograde back from 22 back to 8. Then we go forward. Then we leave the shadow, right? That will be the 3 phases of the retrograde. So we're in phase 1, which is the pre-shadow from the 8th to the 22nd. Then we retrograde back across those degrees. Then the 3rd phase is when we cross those degrees the final time. So this is a preview of coming attractions. And not only do we have this Mercury retrograde happening, but we are going to have the degrees of the Mercury retrograde going to be followed up, okay, by Venus, Mars, and the Sun. What does this mean? It means that there's a lot going on, and it means that there'll be a lot of really critical events that are going to happen over the coming weeks connected to the events of the retrograde. And this will all have a lot to do with silver, actually, because there's a lot going on in the symbolism of the charts right now that is very much metals focused. All right. Now, the eclipse, which is huge, the eclipse is happening on the 17th or the 16th, depending on where you are in the world. It's the 16th in the middle of the US. This is a partial solar eclipse at 28 degrees Aquarius. It's good to know where in your chart that degree lands. What house of your chart has Aquarius? Because the 28, where does the 28 degree of Aquarius fall in your personal chart? For me, that's in my 4th house. So this means solar eclipses have a tendency to remove something, to take something away. Okay, so it can, and this is a partial solar eclipse, so it's not going to take something away completely 100%, but it can remove aspects of things that are going on in that area of your life. Of course, just falling in that house isn't necessarily going to be a big event. If it falls in that house, it could be something. But if it's hitting planets in that house, or if it's hitting planets and making aspects to planets in other houses, so if you have other planets at 28 degrees and this is, aspecting it, then you're going to have things happen. You're going to have events. You're going to have information. You're going to have changes, okay? And the solar eclipse is about the removal of things leaving, things going away. So this is something to be aware of because it's important because it can make big changes in your life. Usually the eclipses are the biggest changes that happen in a person's year, right? And especially if you're getting direct hits. And usually maybe one or two of those eclipses per year will give you some impact. Almost never do you get like 4, but that would be a very eventful year if you did. But this eclipse is really significant. It has what's called a finger of fate in it. Now, basically I was doing the channeling for January for the members, and the guides were saying something about a finger of fate, fate being events that point us in a specific direction. And I went, oh, I better go look at the eclipse chart. And I did, and I didn't see a finger of fate. And then I realized that there was almost a finger of fate. There was sort of an empty area. So I started looking for fixed stars over there, and there were some. There were a handful of them. And they were right on the midheaven of the chart, which is the government, which is the systems of the world. And it is like a reputation, authority, and how things are being seen on the public scale. So this is big. So let me get into what's going on, because the Epstein stuff that we've seen already is actually nothing. So here is the finger of fate chart, which you can see I emphasized. So what this says astrologically is that the worst part of the information about the head, the leaders, the presidents, the kings, the CEOs, the banksters, the people who run all the institutions of our world have not come out yet. And that we are in a critical period of time between now and the 17th. And the most critical time is that weekend up until the 17th, this 14th, 15th through the 17th, where serious stuff is going to come to the surface, and that it's going to be pretty, like people will be shocked. I think that's to put it mildly. It will be world shattering. It's going to shatter people's perspective on life and on the world, because it's in Sagittarius. So it's absolutely going to change people's beliefs about things. It's really going to yank the rug out from under people who've seen things a certain way. Some people have already been seeing a lot of this stuff and already knew what was going on and had been diving into the rabbit hole that the internet provides. But this is going to be undeniable. So brace yourselves for a very bumpy week. We also have Mars activity this week, so we could see battles, attacks happening, taking over of another country, removing the head, the leadership of a country. That's also part of why we've been seeing that happen this last few months, okay? Because we've been under the influence of this eclipse. So that's why Trump went and took, Venezuela. And, this is what's going on. That's why he's after Greenland. We could see a lot of that happening this week. More stuff around that happened this week. And this is somewhat a cover for a lot of the other things that are going on. And the Mars influence with the Mercury retrograde is going to also be covering up for a lot of the shortages in silver, which is key. It's like a foundational pillar of our entire society. So they may hide that from us by creating acts of violence, right? Acts of battle around the world. So this is something that you need to keep your eyes open for. And of course, that would, in fact, spike the price of silver. I expect to see a lot of volatility around silver and cryptos. And of course, stocks already saw some, and we'll even see more coming in the coming weeks. And even in the middle of all of this chaos and craziness, there will be opportunities. There will be big blessings and opportunities for those who are ready to pounce on the good opportunities when they're coming. Because guess what? Everything can drop much lower. Everything can spike much higher. We're probably going to see some combination of all of that happening with the assets around the world in these coming weeks. Things are going to get very, very chaotic. The dollar's not ready to collapse yet, okay? I expect the dollar still has some months left in it. And we still have some spectacular moves in both directions in all of our good investments in the next coming months, weeks. Okay, so that's what I have. If you want more detail, of course, I do go into more timeframes in the members area or right.media. If you want to learn about becoming a member, get the timing report that has a lot of detail about what's going on in February. There's a lot in there. There's just a lot of information. Okay, talk to you guys later. Have a good week. Bye.